Hello, I'm Beth Courtney, President of Louisiana Public Broadcasting, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's panel discussion, From Page to Screen, Translating John James Audubon's Story from Book to Documentary. You know, at LPB, we love books. We have a long and sustained commitment to promoting literacy for all ages, and it is indeed our pleasure today to showcase this unique relationship with the upcoming premiere of A Summer of Birds, a documentary based on the book by the same name by this esteemed author at the end of the table here, Danny Heitman. And this book explores John James Audubon's vivid connection with Louisiana. It was published by the LSU Press to national acclaim last year. This chronicles the time that Audubon spent at Oakley House in the summer of 1821, an eventful period that placed Audubon on the path to become the most famous bird artist in the world. Developing original programming about Louisiana's culture, politics, and history is a core mission at LPB, so we were naturally interested in expanding the audience for this story through a documentary adaptation that will premiere on LPB on December the 2nd. And our panel today, we're going to have a conversation about all this, is indeed, these are the key players. At the end, I mentioned the author, and it all begins with the written word. Danny Heitman, author of A Summer of Birds. Danny is an award-winning columnist for the Baton Rouge Advocate and a member of the Advocate's editorial board. Heitman's essays have appeared in the New York Times, Smithsonian, the Christian Science Monitor, and other national publications. In 2007, Heitman was awarded the Templeton Foundation's National In Character Prize for distinguished commentary on human virtue. Next to Danny is MaryKatherine Callaway, director of the LSU Press, a position she's held since July 2003. MaryKatherine worked for 13 years for the Johns Hopkins University Press in Baltimore and London. She also worked for the University of Georgia Press. Ms. Callaway is the sixth director of the LSU Press's history, overseeing the publication of approximately 85 books per year. Our panel also includes Christina Melton, producer of the documentary version of A Summer of Birds. Christina has been honored with the documentary world's top national and international awards, including the Alfred I. DuPont Columbia Award for Journalism, the Edward R. Murrow Award, the International Cine Golden Eagle, the Emmy Award, 4 Telly Awards, and numerous film festival awards. Her last 3 documentaries for LPB have been broadcast nationally on PBS. And we have missing a key partner in all of this. He's out shooting some other panel, and that is Rex Fortenberry, our terrific cinematographer and editor. He also likes to, I think, he'd like to be behind the camera rather than in front of the camera. So he probably would not please to be on the panel, but we honor him because he is just terrific. Before we get started with our discussion, we're going to show you a little tease of what you're going to see with the documentary. Now, this is a rough cut, so you have to imagine that it will be slightly different, but this is just a little sampling of what the documentary will look like, and we'll have a conversation as soon as we've seen this.
In the summer of 1821, John James Audubon was on a quest to be the best bird artist in the world. His ambition was to create the Birds of America, which was the most comprehensive pictorial record of American birds ever done. But things weren't going well for him. He was depressed, he was destitute, he was down on his luck, and he was quite possibly about to give up on this great ambition of his. And that's when Oakley House offered him a lifeline.
I was glad of such an overture. We concluded the bargain, promising me $60 per month for one half of my time to teach Miss Eliza all I could in drawing, music, dancing, etc. After 100 different plans I'd formed as opposite as could be to this, I found myself bound for several months on a farm in Louisiana.
From an ornithological perspective, he saw more birds than he'd ever seen before. He saw, as he says at one point, the finest rainbow he'd ever seen in his life.
It was the largest temperate deciduous floodplain forest on the face of the planet. It was the Amazon of North America.
Audubon drew more birds in Louisiana than in any other single place. Of the 435 pictures in the Birds of America, 167 were drawn in Louisiana.
Audubon's time at Oakley and in general in the Louisiana area was a time when his art changed dramatically from a fairly stiff, formalistic style of positioning of the birds to the full romantic glory of the paintings that he began doing at that time and that formed the core of the Birds of America.
I think his time in New Orleans is usually, or the whole trip is usually discussed as his coming out, so to speak, as a painter. But it's really also Audubon, the writer, who really transcends the limits, the generic limits of the journal, and starts going off on his own and starts working with language, starts thinking of himself as somebody who can shape words so that a reality that no one else really can write about comes alive on the page. And it's a wild world.
I've been inspired by Audubon in many ways. I think for me the birds that stand out the most in his journal are the birds that are no longer with us, since he's one of the few people that documented those birds. So ivory-billed woodpecker, which may or may not still be extant, Carolina parakeet, passenger pigeon.
I don't think there's any other state that can compete with us in terms of the number of individual birds you can see in a day.
When we present these data to people outside of Louisiana, the reaction to the numbers of birds in different sites is one fairly much of just utter astonishment. The only place that I've really heard of that has a map that's similar to this map in terms of just having most of it covered with large landscape scale IBAs is Brazil.
When he's in Oakley, he's just surrounded, he's in paradise essentially. It's an ornithological paradise for him. Every day yields something new to him.
Audubon had a gift for the tall tale. He had a genius for eccentricity, and he liked to live life large. While those things are certainly not unique to Louisiana, they certainly made Audubon seem at home here. He seemed very much a native son. At one point, in one of his taller tales, he even claimed to have been born here. And a lot of Louisianians assume that he was born here because, in so many ways, he seems to be one of us.
The state of Louisiana has always been my favorite portion of the Union.
I guess the first question goes to MaryKatherine, and we had a wonderful collaboration with the LSU Press on a previous book, A Atchafalaya Houseboat. And I guess looking back at it and then looking forward to this particular documentary in collaboration with the book, how do you think one helps the other, and what was your reaction? What are you expecting from this, and how did the other experience work?
We're very, very lucky to have been able to collaborate with LPB on both of these documentaries. It really has been a wonderful experience. The authors have been very pleased. When publishers publish a book, it's kind of a set, fixed object, and so you're trying to find different ways that you might open up that book for other readers, that people that draw them in so that they can experience the book. And certainly the opportunity to do a documentary really accomplishes that, because it allows them to see a world that they can't see on the pages. And I think most of you who've just seen this little teaser of the documentary are probably very anxious to read the book now and find out more. And that's really what a good documentary does. I think both the Atchafalaya book and this film really began with great material, and that's what you need to start with. You need something that is well written, and certainly this book is incredibly well written, and it gives you a lot of background to work with. I guess you can speak to that. But what what it really does is give us an opportunity to showcase the book to a wider audience. Obviously, as you know, scholarly publishing has some real budgetary restrictions these days. We can't afford to advertise in national publications very often. So this is a way to reach that local audience, and then if the documentary actually gets picked up by the national public broadcasting, it can actually open it up to the entire country. So it really is a wonderful opportunity. I think the other thing about LPB that's worth noting is that they work very closely with the authors. So if you know, you probably have all had the experience of seeing a film adaptation of a book that you really loved, and you think, gosh, there really wasn't much of the book in there. And one reason that happens sometimes is because the authors aren't involved in the making of that film. That you license the rights to the book, and then the film company kind of takes it from there. But with this LPB experience, they've worked very, very closely with Danny, and then on the previous one they worked with Gwen Rowland to be sure that they're capturing the essence of the book. And remember that authors know a lot more than what ends up being in the final book. We really dissuade them from doing the 800-page version of the manuscript, which is maybe how they started out. And so there's a lot that didn't make it into the book, and some of that can be brought out in a documentary. I have to say that the response from the authors and from the public and from everybody has just been so positive with the LPB collaborations. They really just do an incredible job, and I think it's a challenge, and they manage it beautifully, and it's just been a wonderful, wonderful experience. I think just staying true to that work, but opening up, that's not an easy thing to do, but they've done a marvelous job. And I think you can see from this little teaser that this is going to be quite something. So we're excited about it.
Well, we're excited about the partnership. Now, trepidation an author must always have going into something like this. Danny, there's an opportunity, but also a little risk here for you as well. Are there other things you can tell in a documentary that you didn't put in the book? Expand your horizons a little?
Well, can everyone hear me? Eudora Welty talked about her apprehension in mailing off her manuscripts, putting them in the post office box. She said she always felt like she wanted to reach back and get the manuscript and start revising it again to add things. And I think all authors feel that way. And one of the marvelous things about doing this documentary was that it afforded an opportunity to expand on themes and add material that came to light after the book was published. Audubon, if I had to sum up his art and his writing with one word, it would be immediacy. He really strove to make that sense of immediate connection with his art and give it a sense of urgency. And I think TV was really a medium that was tailor-made for him. In fact, in the book, I say that if Audubon were alive today, he'd probably want to have his own cable TV show. And I think this TV documentary is really a realization of that. And I think it's a great format for Audubon because, of course, he was a visual artist and he was a great storyteller. And TV is all about great images and also great stories. I think the thing that made this collaboration such a natural fit is that all good relationships are based on shared values. And LSU Press and Louisiana Public Broadcasting both have a long and sustained commitment to national standards of excellence in the work that they do. And I just couldn't be more pleased to have been connected as a writer with two great institutions like this. And also, it just helped enormously to have Christina involved in this project. Christina won't brag on herself, but she is a filmmaker of national distinction, and she is just extremely good at what she does. And I think one of Christina's goals and one of my goals in doing the film was to avoid an Abe Lincoln slept here story. And by that I mean a story that's about something that happened in the distant past, and now it's over, and now it's sort of vanished into a reliquary. This is about a living legacy, and that's why Christina took great pains to include modern-day commentators, environmentalists, preservationists, ornithologists, who are seeking to extend this natural beauty and preserve it for future generations, the same beauty that Audubon appreciated. I think one of the big lessons that we learned in doing the shooting of these historical recreations was just how difficult Audubon's challenges were in the woods in and around St. Francisville. We began shooting in the woods one morning just after dawn. We got up in the summer around dark and headed out to the woods because we wanted to beat the heat, which was enormous. And it really underscored for us the challenges that Audubon had, because in that summer of 1821, of course, it was very hot. He would get up early in the morning, go into the woods. When we were trying to do some historical recreations with Audubon firing his weapon, because of the humidity, the flint would not work. And we had many outtakes because of that. And it made me think, gosh, how many birds did Audubon miss when he was hunting because his weapon wouldn't work? We were out in the woods about 3 hours, and we were, I think, all exhausted after that. We also got chiggers. And, you know, to think that Audubon did this every day, and he did this for many, many more hours than we did, and he had no map of where he was going, it really brought home to me the sacrifices that he made to create these pictures. I mean, we tend to look at these pictures and we think of them as delicate and ornate and refined, and they're all of those things. But they were purchased. These images were brought to life through enormous toil and risk, and that's one of the lessons that I learned in doing this documentary.
How did you, Danny, how did you initially decide to write this book?
Well, I am, as I tell people quite often, I'm not an Audubon scholar or a bird expert or a historian. I was impressed by a remark that the historian David McCulloch made several years ago when he was visiting Baton Rouge. David McCulloch said, "History is interesting because things didn't have to turn out the way that they did. They could have gone the other way." And it made me think of all those periods in history with which I was just nominally familiar, in which it seemed that history was on a hinge. It could have gone one way or it could have gone another, but that Providence had blown in, history in the right direction. And it seemed to me that Oakley was just such a place, because Audubon was really in tough shape in 1821, and he was quite possibly about to give up on this idea he had to be a bird artist. And when Oakley offered him a lifeline, it offered him financial resources, it offered him a great landscape in which to find birds. And I was in discussion with LSU Press and kicking around a few ideas, and I just said, you know, just parenthetically at the close of a conversation to Margaret Hart Lovecraft, who's an editor there, I said, you know, somebody ought to do a book about that, about Oakley. And she said, well, when would you like to get started? And I said, well, Margaret, I'm not the person to do this book for reasons I've already mentioned. And Margaret said something that really stuck with me. Margaret said, Danny, if you don't do the book, probably no one will. And, you know, in Louisiana, we tend to have somebody ought to do something about that syndrome. Somebody ought to do something about public education or littering or another issue. And it occurred to me that instead of looking to someone else to do this, that I should at least try to do the book. And but I knew I would need help to get the book done. And one of the first people I turned to was the folks at LSU's Hill Memorial Library, who have a wonderful archive of Audubon art. Elaine Smith and her staff were just tireless, and in their efforts to advance this project, I cannot thank them enough. And so that's how the book got done. And the thing that I think is gratifying to me is that the book and the movie, the documentary, will showcase the treasures that we have at Hill Memorial Library, as well as the treasure that is Oakley House. So.
And MaryKatherine, I know you're probably, this is the sort of book that you want to do. It serves many
absolutely.
missions. And what are your hopes for this, coupled with the documentary? What do you hope happens?
Well, you know, the real core of the mission of Louisiana State University Press is to reach out and tell people about the wonderful history of this state, to inform and to educate, but you want to do it in a delightful way. So this book really encapsulates everything we try to do because it is wonderfully written. It's incredibly readable, but there's good, solid history there, and there's a lot that people have no idea. They didn't know. They know, you'd be amazed at the people around the country that don't even know that Audubon came to Louisiana to paint the birds. It's never occurred to them before. So this is a real way to educate people about what a wonderful treasure the state is, both people within the state and around the country. And that's really one thing that, as I said, the documentary helps is to open the book up to a much, much larger audience. The book is sold very, very well, but there's no question that when you have that tie-in, it opens it up to a new audience as well. So we're very excited about it.
One of the things that I learned in really contemplating whether to do this book is just for kicks, I typed Audubon into the search engine on Amazon. About 300 titles popped up, and there were books about Audubon's time in the Northeast, about Audubon's time in Florida, about Audubon's time in Scotland, where he had gone to get financing for his Birds of America project. Of all of those titles, there was one book about Audubon in Louisiana, and it really wasn't so much a book as a pamphlet that was done by the Friends of the Cabildo in 1966. Now, Audubon said this was his favorite place in the country, Louisiana. He did more bird pictures here than in any other single place on earth. And yet there wasn't a book about his time here. And I think, a wise person once said, to really love something, you have to know something about it. And I think if we really want to engender a love for Louisiana and its landscape, we have to do a better job of educating our own people about the treasures that we have here. And that's one of the things that I wanted to do in the book. But I also did not want this book just to be a cheerleader book. I wanted the scholarship to be vetted, and I wanted all of the assertions to be held up. And so we had this book vetted. Christoph Irmscher, who's perhaps the best Audubon scholar in the country, read the book, and he said, I'm really glad that someone has taken up this subject because it is a story that needed to be told. And in all the places that I went to ask people for their research and their assistance in telling this story, it was as if they were waiting for me to show up. Pardon me, they really wanted this story to be told, and so I think that is really a satisfying thing as an author, but also as a filmmaker. You want good stories, and you want to tell stories that have not been told before, and so that's why I'm just personally excited about the book as well as the documentary.
One of the things, Christina, we have in this documentary and in any film is that you don't have on the written page is that we have this we have unique sound elements, and you didn't hear it so much here, but Christina kept coming back going, wait till you hear the bird sounds that we have in this. The reenactment of the dining scene looked like it was fun, right?
Christina had cooked a turkey that had been laying out about 6 or 7 hours, and so we were instructed under no circumstances should you eat the turkey during the scene. So we were all pretty tired and a little bit punch drunk at that point in the shooting. But it was a lot of fun, and we had a good time. I think an interesting thing about the timing of this production and the shooting is that we shot these historical recreations over the summer. At the time that we were shooting, LSU Press had just sustained a significant budget cut. LPB was facing budget cuts, and the staff at Oakley House, who'd just bent over backwards to accommodate us during the shooting, many of those people that were out there did not know whether they would have a job the next week because of budget cuts. And, you know, all of our public institutions in Louisiana are really facing budgetary challenges right now. And I think that really sends home two things to me. And the first thing is we have got to do a better job of supporting those institutions in our state that advance a life of the mind and of learning. And secondly, because we have these budget challenges, we have to do our best to utilize what we have. And that underscores the value of collaboration. And in doing this book, we used LSU Press, we used LSU's Hill Memorial Library, the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, the Office of State Parks, and now Louisiana Public Broadcasting. All of these public institutions working in concert to advance this story. And I really think that this kind of collaboration can be a model going forward for other projects in which our public institutions can all work together. So I'm very proud of that.
And used in the classroom as well, because we think, and you know, you can catalog and save something, but you also have to tag it so you know what you're looking up. So we think this has a great opportunity for the future. We're doing that with our Louisiana History series, but we're also part of a big national project called the American Archives, and we're one of the, you know, key pilot states. So we're very excited about this because this fits in to the whole theme of collaboration that we should all be doing, and we hope with State Library as well. Other questions, anyone?
Well, lest anybody think that that there's a huge production budget for the documentary, there's a scene in the movie, in the documentary, in which Audubon is required to paint a deathbed portrait for a neighbor who's passed away. There was nobody to play the corpse, and so they needed somebody that had the ability to lie down for long periods of time without moving. And it just seemed that destiny was calling me, and so I was I was the corpse in the film. But this is the kind of collaboration I'm talking about. You know, I mean, these productions are done on a very small budget. And when I think about the productions that LPB has done, as well as what LSU Press does on, you know, very small budgets, and this documentary is just beautifully produced, and this book, I've gone in Louisiana and outside of Louisiana to talk about this book, and what people consistently tell me is the production values on this book are just astounding. They say it's just such a beautifully designed book, and it's so well made, and I just think it's a credit to LSU Press and to Louisiana Public Broadcasting that they're able to do so much with so relatively little. So,
well, MaryKatherine, we thank you so much for all of your role in this, and Danny, thank you. Great success, and Christina, we're so proud of you at LPB, and we thank you for joining us today, and I can't wait till December 2nd when we'll be airing the program here locally in Louisiana, and then we hope nationally further on. So thank you all, and good afternoon.